I'm in the middle of the woods setup.
Yeah, Daniel's like a Blair Witch Project over here.
That's perfect. So we watched K-pop Demon Hunter again for the second time this morning.
Really?
And then we've been listening to the music all day.
Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, it's fantastic. The animation is beautiful. The script is fantastic. The characters are delightful. The voice acting is spot on.
Amazing.
The songs, I'm not a pop music guy, and certainly I'm not familiar with K-pop at all, but the songs are unbelievably catchy. And
yeah,
I both times by the end, I'm crying.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing.
It had way more heart than it had any right to have. It's just a joy. Just such a good movie.
Wow.
And such a cool I mean, obviously I know this is a Korean film, not a Japanese, so there's not a one-to-one thing with anime.
I believe Korean manga is a thing.
Yeah, manhwa I think is what it's called.
Manhwa.
And I don't know what their anime is called. But it was the best. There were certain facial expressions and things that they did that were the best use that I've seen of kind of anime style expressions in 3D animation.
Oh yeah. See that when I watched the trailer, I was like, similarly, I was like, oh man, this actually looks good.
Yeah. Well, I think the animation team I think it's the same group that did the Into the Spider-Verse movies.
Oh, so, that makes a lot of sense.
Wildly creative folks. No, he did not. I think it was all produced by actual K-pop producers and bands.
Makes sense.
But no, and it's sincerely, the music was great. Like the songs are, every single one of them are fucking bangers and have been playing in our house and vehicles nonstop. And the demons, are a little they're a little weird, but it's important to remember too that they're like it's Eastern demons.
It's Eastern demons, which really just means like spirits,
monsters,
like Pokemon.
Yes, like Frieren.
So yes, very much so. They're very much like, if it, again, is Korean. So I'm not up on Korean mythology, so I don't know what the term would be, but it's very similar to like yokai.
They're almost like Japan. Our vampires, to be honest.
In some ways, yeah.
The way they understand demons or convey them is very similar to how we do vampires.
But they also have some really derpy, silly looking ones and stuff. It's just so much fun. It's a breath of fresh air. It was the best animated movie I've seen in a long time.
Okay.
Cool. I do have a meme I'd like to share.
Okay. Do you want to do that at the beginning?
Yeah. It's dumb, but yeah.
Okay. Well, just do it now, and then I'll say hi, and we can get kind of going.
So I know all of us. Okay, here we go. So I know all of us have been out of the dating game for quite a while, but I did find that this tip was quite helpful from our dear friend Henry Cavill. Can you guys see that?
Yes, indeed.
I can see your screen.
Can you see the Henry Cavill meme?
No.
I cannot see a Henry Cavill meme.
There it is. If you like her, just ask her out. Always works for me. Henry Cavill, 41 years old. And I think he's, you just need to have some confidence.
Just have some confidence.
Just go for it. It helps
if you it works for him,
if you look like Henry Cavill.
You're right.
But, you miss all the shots that you don't take.
I haven't shared it with you yet. Brother. I don't remember what movie they were in together. Oh, it was probably Mission Impossible. But Vanessa Kirby, who's in the recent Fantastic Four, she's Sue Storm.
She's fantastic, if you will.
That's what I've heard. But she's in an interview with Henry Cavill, and Henry.
I think I've seen this clip.
You've seen the clip. He's giving a response, and she's looking at him like a slab of beef, and she's starving. And it's,
you know what though? Let's be frank. We all would be there.
Yeah, we get it.
Straight as an arrow and would be in the exact same position.
But yeah, it's pretty funny. It's like, wow, like she's biting her lip and just kind of like going up and down and really just soaking it in. But
yep, it's incredible.
Wow.
A little bit of romance novel in real life going on.
But I love that Henry just solved the incel problem. Just ask girls out and they'll say yes.
Just ask girls out.
They'll say yes.
As long as you look like Henry Cavill and are a gentleman like Henry Cavill. Because supposedly he is actually quite he is a gentleman.
Wow. There's another meme I'll show at some point of all his female co-stars and how they
you've got a series of memes. Okay.
Series of Henry Cavill memes to sprinkle throughout the episode. That's perfect.
He is he's a great guy.
I have thought a pretty good little bit, and I would have to figure out the technology way to do it quickly, and maybe it would just be screenshots, but I have thought a fun thing for us to do is my meme dumps I've been doing to you guys, but recording it and just giving them all together. I actually think that would be pretty fun. So
that would be good. A recurring segment.
Yeah.
Undertowers meme review.
We just read like honestly we could also take turns doing this, but like the 10 posts I like this week, and then I subject you all to them.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I've been thinking about that. We'll play with that. Okay. Well, welcome, Maigavannon. This is the Undertowers. I'm Daniel.
I'm Steven.
I'm Sam.
Amazing. And guys, it's great to be here with you to talk about peace. And to have a little book club action. This is the there it is. I love it.
It's blending in the background. There we go.
Yeah. I've got my copy here somewhere too. But this is
we've returned to the realm of Gene Wolfe.
We have, and this is the third Wolfe novel we've read, depending on how you quantify it. I guess it's if you count each as individuals, it's the seventh.
The seventh,
actually feels 3 and 7 are both mystical numbers, so those both feel very special.
Yes.
And I can't say that there's actually anything there, but it does feel appropriate for peace for some reason.
It does actually. It's also his third novel, which so there's something there. But also in some ways it's his first full-length novel that was well received, because his Operation Aries was not received very well. He had written a bunch of short stories, and most people that were fans of Gene received that saying, "We know you can do better." I've heard it's not actually terrible, but that it's just not the heights of what Gene can do. And then his first novel was The Fifth Head of Cerberus, which is 3 novellas that were extended to become a novel. Peace is the first, his first true novel that was received with all the love and admiration that Gene would really come to garner throughout his career. And interestingly, it was written basically at the same time as Fifth Head. Peace, I do believe, was finished before the entirety of Fifth Head was finished, but he couldn't get it published for so it was finished in 1972, but he couldn't get it published. And then
why I don't understand why.
And I do
the editors were still reading it.
They're like, bro, what is this?
What? This is going to take me a couple more times, man, before I understand here.
Did you mean to write this way?
Are you sure?
Is this version like draft? Sure? Is this a draft?
But yeah, so but it comes out in 1975. It's his third novel, as I've said.
That's so crazy. 1975 is so nuts.
It's so long ago.
When did Star Wars come out?
77.
77. So 2 years before Star Wars.
Before this craziness comes out. So,
and then this also it means this year we had the 50th anniversary. So we're kind of this is very timely.
Looky there.
There's all sorts of little synchronicities about this. Very special.
It is a special book. So we not to throw you off, but just for anybody that hasn't watched some of our other Wolfe discussions, we have the other books that we have read as a group. Daniel's read a few more outside of this, and we're starting some other things. But as a group, we have read Book of the New Sun, and we have read Wizard Knight. So those are the 6 other books of Gene Wolfe's that we have read up to this point.
Indeed.
Yes.
I will also interject there. If you're a reader, Gene Wolfe is the hardest type of like author to read from. And Peace is the hardest book I've ever read in my whole life. And reading any of his other stuff almost feels like I'm back in like just reading Hooked on Phonics compared to it. Because we're reading another book by him, and it's basically like reading like a 5-year-old first grade like level reading compared to
It
Peace.
is wildly complicated.
Peace is insane to read and does not make sense, basically.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about that, Peace is a great, like, if you like science fiction and fantasy, and you like the more complicated stuff, and you've read, I guess I'd say if you like classics, I think you'll love Peace. Peace will be a really interesting entryway if you like Dickens and you like Faulkner and you like probably James Joyce. This would be
definitely Joyce.
This is like right there. But also if you've read other Gene Wolfe, you'll like it, but it is very different in a lot of ways than other things I've read of his.
I would say unless you're a massive fan of those classics that you mentioned, especially like Faulkner and Joyce, I would not
Sound
recommend.
And the Fury, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would not recommend Peace as your entry point into reading Wolfe.
No, I don't.
I've recommended Wizard Knight to people frequently as a good jumping off point, and that was the last Wolfe novel that we read. Peace, I would say, is not where you start.
No, I feel the same way. I wouldn't, even though it is early in his career, I would start with either Fifth Head. Wizard Knight is great for later Wolfe, and then Book of the New Sun is a fantastic place to start. But I just with Book of the New Sun, it's just one, if it doesn't grab you, maybe wait and get back to it. But you do just have to chug through it. You just kind of have to go.
Yeah.
And it's less of a grind. It's like, I know there's a lot of books that are like, oh, it's 1,000 pages, so you just have to go. It's slow. That's not the issue with Book of the New Sun. It's that it's Wolfe and it's confusing, and there's no context, and so you just got to learn. No, like you don't understand things, and that's the point. And you will as time goes on if you invest in what's happening.
And right,
but with Book of the New,
the best thing about Wolfe, in all his books that I've experienced is that he does zero hand-holding.
Yep.
He does not help you understand his story. His help is writing the sentence. And once he's written one sentence, he will not repeat himself. And that is what sets him apart from any other writer or author I've ever read anything about, is that he writes one sentence and he means it. He means every enunciation he stands. Even he has a typo in one book, right, Stephen? Like,
yeah,
that he left on purpose because he means it.
So I would say, just continuing briefly with that, Peace, I would say of all the Wolfe I've read, including a couple short stories, this is the least approachable Gene Wolfe that I have read. However, I want to put a big caveat there, because all of this, while I think an important part to discussing approaching Peace, how unapproachable it is, how complicated it is, how what the fuck did we just read it is through the whole book, even until the end, unlike other Wolfe novels. I do want to say that kind of step up of difficulty setting, much like playing Dark Souls or Elden Ring or something,
right,
it is wildly satisfying when we sit down and finally get to talk about the book, and you start putting the pieces together and everything starts falling into place, and you start kind of making your way towards figuring out what this book is all about. That extra difficulty level, and the not straightforward storytelling at all, it makes the figuring it out just supremely satisfying.
Yes.
It's everything you loved about watching Lost as it was airing, but without being disappointed at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so funny. It's also, though, we say all this, I do think it might be, at least for all that I've read, the best Wolf for someone who doesn't read classic sci-fi or
true
high fantasy. Like if you just are if you're just a reader of
books,
if you like to read novels but you just read books,
if you're a reader of
probably,
words, these words
or
are
I guess
put together well.
If you find imagining convoluted worlds to just not be your jam, if that's just not what you like, if you love Madame Bovary and you like Pride and Prejudice, and you like, not that this book is like that, you like Jane Eyre and you like that stuff, or
you like the classics.
You like the classics. This one and have a general aversion to science fiction. This is probably the Gene Wolfe if you're curious to read. But I would also recommend, if you're going to do that, and we've done this with our group, like or we've done this by reading other of his works. I mean, reading some of his short stories is a great way, because the thing with Wolfe is you do have to get to know him, because he gives you puzzles, he gives you games, he gives you things to figure out. And so, like, again, the confusion is the point, because you're supposed to try to figure out what's going on. And then he's also a tricky author, where he literally tricks you and hides important details behind
what he doesn't say is almost as important as what he does say.
Yes.
That's why I think he might be the most masterful stream of consciousness writer there is.
I mean, at least in genre fiction.
Sure, yeah.
I guess Joyce is the one who's another one I'd say, it's a lot less longer, but if you like the Russian novelists, I think you would probably really like Peace, because it's philosophical in the same way that Dostoevsky is, and those books are. Not that I've read a bunch of those, but those books have lots of big ideas on what life is like, and that this book is doing that same thing.
I still would classify Peace as a work of science fiction.
Yeah, I agree.
It as we'll discuss as we go along, you could make the argument that it is.
I mean, it's low on that scale, though.
Well, yeah, I was going to say any of the fantastical elements are almost more potentially on a spiritual level than a science fiction level, which lends itself to that more classical literature bent.
Absolutely.
Well, and also kind of like almost horror in that way. I mean, not like full-fledged, like but it kind of
in the same way that there's kind of horror,
the spooky genre a little bit.
In the same way that there is an element of horror to like Christmas Carol.
Yes.
The ghost story element of Christmas Carol.
I think yes. It's a horror book without and actually it's often classified as horror, which is interesting too. But it's
because it's anti-redemptive. There's no redemption in this story.
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Which is a horror thing, right?
Yes. But there's in the LA Review of Books, there's actually a really famous, famous, it's a well-known review of Peace.
It had like 15 readers, which is holy shit. That's a lot of people, man. 15? Damn.
15's more than 14.
And 14 is like lesser than. Yeah, go on. Go on with the famous review.
But it's a reading of Peace that also admits that it's not the canonical reading, which we'll talk about, I think, as we go. But it reviews it as just psychological. There is no supernatural in the book at all. There is no there is no anything extra. This is just the which we've talked about reading it that way.
I was going to say that sounds kind of very much in line with my original
reading of the book,
of the character and his position in the
isn't
the
all
novel.
Sci-fi that anyways? It's all just make believe anyways. So.
I mean, no, for sure.
I mean, it literally is, but it isn't necessarily in the story. Like it is to us, but in the story, it's real. And I can see there. I don't know now having finished the book, having discussed it with you guys a little bit, having read a little bit more about it, I don't know that I agree with this anymore, but I do think there is a reading where it is purely psychological and there is no underlying spiritual or sci-fi kind of thing going on. I don't know that I jive with that as much anymore.
I feel very confident that that's not the book Wolfe wrote, but it is a way you can read it where the character, whose name is Alden Dennis Weir, we haven't said that yet, that is our narrator and the author of the work we are reading that Wolfe has written. But you can read this memoir as a psychotic break, or potentially some sort of mental, some sort of physiological deterioration, whether it's a stroke or dementia. You can. There's absolutely a reading of that on that level, I think. Yeah.
Well, he mentions a stroke, and that was my initial thought, was that this is the writings of a man with dementia, brought on by some sort of stroke or something, that is trying to recall his life.
Yes, basically. So,
I'm having a new thought I'll share later.
Okay, well, and feel free to chime it in, but I think, we've kind of talked our general impressions, but before we really
spoiler time,
before we really dive into spoilers, I really found the reading of this book, which is interesting, to Sam's point of it being horror or unsettling. When I started, and I found the first chapter is really bizarre, and we can talk more detail about that. And then as you get into it, we're getting the events of Alden's life told in very sparse, specific details, and very sparse and specific segments. That works at the beginning. It's the first chapter is very all over the place for the first 20-ish pages before we settle into some childhood memories. And then the second chapter, you get into more childhood memories where he's living with his aunt. And at this point, most of the book is very, I've heard other people describe it as pastoral, and I think that's about right. It feels like, the chronology of the book is uncertain and is a topic of debate, but it's something like the turn of the century, and in that,
industrial revolution
20s, 30s area, at the beginning. And so you get this interesting time of America going through lots of change. The Industrial Revolution has happened. You get the World War, and you get the Roaring Twenties and all that stuff. So that's kind of the backdrop of this stuff. And he's in somewhere in the Midwest. And then those early chapters take place in a southern state at his grandfather's house, that's not named. But it reads very it's strange, but there's a coziness, and there's this old world Americana that sets in. And then as you get into the later book, it goes from feeling there's these warm childhood vibes, and quickly you realize like something's not right. This is really, like, it's really uncomfortable. It's really again, the book is kind of bizarre in general, but you start to feel like something is very wrong. And I think that started for me in the third chapter, where you're like, my sense of this was, and then it just careens kind of off the rails as you continue, especially in the fourth chapter and then to the end. And then it ends very abruptly and sort of bizarrely. And then it is, like you said, after that, you pick up the pieces. Like, Stephen, talk a little about how did the book come across to you before we like super dive in. And then Sam, you should comment on this too. Like, how did it come across in those capacities?
So, one thing I'll say is a common occurrence with Wolfe books, in my experience with them thus far, is that you have to, there's a process to reading Wolfe that always involves a reread to fully start digesting the material. But thus far in my experience with it, there is a point at the end of the books where things click into place and contextualize a lot of stuff that happened at the beginning. Wizard Knight is a perfect example of that, where all of a sudden you know, I immediately went back and reread the first chapter of Wizard Knight after I finished it, and he literally telegraphs so many of the things about the ending of that book at the very beginning of the story, and you can't understand what's happening because you don't have the context of the whole piece. But nice. With this one, did not feel that way at all.
No, I know.
It was not until I started doing some further reading, that, and then our first discussion of it, that things really started kind of falling into place for me. But I will say, I don't think I was wildly off the mark.
Yeah.
So initial thoughts. We've mentioned stream of consciousness. We've mentioned Joyce. I know when we discussed this book before we started reading it, those things came up as well. So I was expecting it. It's I would say, he certainly wrote the first chapter very stream of consciousness. I think it starts kind of evening out after you get past that first chapter.
And that totally
that to me really lent to that feeling of like being kind of unmoored and unsure of what was happening, and not just me as the reader, but Alden Weir as the narrator also being unmoored to reality and trying to figure out what's going on himself, not just me, the reader. So my initial thought, because he does reference the stroke, and he's traveling back in his mind to doctors that he's been to in the past and conversing with them as a child and as a young man about this stroke that he's had in the future. So my initial reading definitely was, this is a man that has, he's an older man. He's got dementia. He's dying, and he's had at least a stroke, and is trying to put the pieces together of his life. I am a fan of horror literature. This didn't ever fully feel like horror to me, because there was never any super scary or tense moments. But what I will say, like you alluded to, Daniel, is that there is an increasing sense of kind of unease and of things not being quite right as the book continues, and it escalates to the end, where in the final chapters there's some things that are revealed that, you know, if you had any questions about whether or not Alden Weir was a good man, they're kind of answered pretty unequivocally. And so it takes some turns as that goes. But I did notice and definitely felt that feel of unease escalating throughout the book. So without diving into too many spoilers or anything, that was kind of my journey throughout the book. I loved a lot of the stories, kind of the middle section of the book there, which is mostly him recalling other characters telling stories. Was very entertaining. Smith, his story was certainly one of my favorite parts of the whole book. We'll talk more about that as we get to it. But absolutely fascinating story. The first time I've ended a Wolfe novel like truly feeling like I didn't know I knew hardly anything more at the end than I did when I started. But
maybe more and less
again with just time. But then it did, you know, I don't think I was that far off, and pieces really started falling into place as I started reading more analysis and we talked about it.
Sam, do you want to take a moment again before we dive in, and how were you feeling about this book as you read it, and then as you've kind of continued to
more and more as I look back on all my readings of Gene Wolfe, I feel like whenever he cracked the code of how to make the Pringle, like I feel like he also cracked the code on the afterlife, and every novel he's written has been like just for him to like fuck with us so he could have fun as a ghost watching people talk about shit that he's written. Like, I think he's alive and well in some like metaphorical, ethereal space, and he's like, wow, these guys are all idiots. And like just watching us read his shit, and like he's like, I made the Pringle wave, bro. I like figured out life, the purpose of it, and afterlife, and how to like, you know, pass my time as a hobby and watch you guys read my stuff. So in my very first reading of Peace, I did notice immediately how, and also knowing that this is his first like acclaimed novel, but basically his first book, right? For all intents and purposes, how he kind of has almost coined or like created the idea of an unreliable narrator in all his stories. That every book we've read of his, there's somebody saying something, and a lot of what they're not saying is very, very significant in terms of the overall story, because a lot of like spaces they leave paint a picture of what could be. Now, all his other novels, like the pictures are clear, but Peace's pictures are very like he's dead the whole time, or he's in a coma, or it's not this, or he's being raped by his aunt. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's so much blank space there that you could fill it in, and all of it does make sense from the point of view he conveys.
Yeah.
But with that, the confusion is so much that it's more like this book is about discussion. But I also think that's masterful, because for me in reading the book, it's like this book to me is what death is supposed to be like rest in peace, right? And peace is mostly just remembering the memories you have and trying to make sense out of them, and basically never coming to a cohesive, agreed upon synopsis of the life. And that's kind of why I think he wrote it that way, like to where it could be basically conjecture for infinity. And so whenever I look at this, I'm like, yeah, he made this confusing on purpose, because that's what being in death is like. So my first take on that was sort of in that vein, but as I've revisited it, I'm like, yeah, I think he's trying to screw us around on purpose. Like, because I think ultimately Alden is a ghost, and in that sort of sense of unfinished business, if you will, with without that Patrick Swayze movie. I do think that that's like kind of understood in this context. Yeah, like Ghost is just cyclical in nature and never really resolving, but always having an issue with what they did or how they lived or how it affected them in their physical life. And then that's kind of my take on the whole thing.
Well, and we've been kind of we've been circling around that idea, and we'll start diving into the novel here. And but as we do that, it's interesting you say that. The awareness that I think the story we're getting is from someone who has died and is now reprocessing their life is, I think, the big idea behind this book. And Wolfe being a Catholic, there's maybe an element of being in either hell or purgatory, or is that the same thing? And is it purgatory if you're processing it? Is it hell if you're stuck there? It's kind of an idea, I think, there. What's interesting is you talk about the ghost idea, and that maybe our narrator is a ghost. I didn't know that per se going into the book, but I had heard it's a ghost story. But this is one of those funny things where this is something James Wynn of Rereading Wolfe talks about a lot, is how like you kind of can't spoil a Gene Wolfe story, because knowing that going into it, I knew that, and I was looking for a ghost throughout the book, and
you got one.
Couldn't find it. I was like trying to find
it. It wasn't really a ghost.
Turns out he was just there the whole time.
Ghost story usually implies like haunted house, like a haunting is happening to the narrator or to the viewpoint character. It's not usually the main character is a ghost.
In this book, the narrator's haunting it. In this book, the aunt is haunting it. The actual ghost they talk about is haunting it. the freaking gypsy and the banshee's haunting it. Like
well, except
everybody's haunting everything.
Except as we'll talk about, the one ghost that is mentioned isn't. I don't think is actually a ghost.
No, isn't a ghost.
Might even be like a zombie, which is a totally different
zombie thing. It is, yeah.
It's totally different, but I think she's still alive.
Yeah, I think that's right.
In a Frankenstein way, right?
Yeah.
But before we dive fully into the story, one thing I wanted to point out, because we mentioned this a lot and I find it fascinating, because everything we've read thus far of Wolfe is all written in first person, and so he has a well-deserved reputation for unreliable narrators. And Severian, Sir Abel, and Latro are his, like, the big three of his unreliable narrators, for good reason. But I think that Alden Weir needs to be up there. I don't, because he's wildly unreliable, and yet again, what I love is he's unreliable again in a completely different way than those other three.
Latro is definitely pure of heart.
Well, he just doesn't remember.
That's what I mean.
At least in the beginning, like, he just can't remember what's happened.
I'm basically Guy Pearce in Memento. Like,
and Abel doesn't is unreliable because he doesn't understand. He's a kid to start off with. Severian is Severian.
It's Severian. He's unreliable in the worst way.
I mean, you could say he's unreliable because he's a ghost and he's putting together his life.
Yeah.
Or he's a ghost and he's in the beginning stages of whatever sort of either atonement that he's going through in a purgatory kind of sense, or the beginnings of his experience in hell, and is not, his unreliability comes from a place of not yet acknowledging his sins, not yet acknowledging the evils that he perhaps perpetrated. And I just find I love that you're it seems, the more I read, that you're essentially guaranteed an unreliable narrator in a Wolfe novel, but it's all going to be different than the previous unreliable narrators. Not just because they're different characters, but because they have different motivations or different reasons for being unreliable than the other characters.
Yes, and having read several more of his works on my own, I can say that theme continues. And it's funny where Wolfe is an author that has certain little tropes and ideas that he loves to come back to, like the stories within stories. He loves to do the whole, I'll tell you something if you tell me something, and then I'll tell you three things if you tell me three. There's a lot of little things he pulls from again and again, which are little ideas for whatever reason he likes to do. But in the actual works, what he's doing with his narrators when he's using that first person, which is something he does quite a lot. The way he has them approach it in each one, it is very, very different. We don't need to get into Fifth Head right now, but there's a similar thing in Fifth Head. And again, with it being three different novellas, it's a whole different thing there too. But it's really fascinating, and it really speaks to just the quality of author that he is able to have these characters express themselves, hide things, while also revealing themselves in places they mean to and don't mean to, and then he means to. And again, it really does. And to maybe put a bow just on this section just a little bit, it really does. It makes reading a Wolfe book so unique, where he's not the only author that lets you figure things out or find things off the page, but you can think about a Wolfe book in a way I haven't found anybody that fully replicates that feeling. where like, again, Peace, you read it, it's beautiful. There are lots of interesting ideas. There's so many beautiful turns of phrase, beautiful prose. But then, like you said, Stephen, the wonderful thing comes from talking about the book, reading about the book, thinking about the book after you're done rereading it.
Yeah.
That's just as, if not more enjoyable, than the actual reading of it. And it's such a treasure. And I will say, the first time, especially when I read Book of the New Sun, the next book I read after that gave me such whiplash of like, oh my gosh, it's just like, it's like you get
it's all there.
It's like culture shock. Yeah, you're just saying the stuff, and like.
I will say though, if you want to read something after this that doesn't feel as bad as that, read Jack Vance.
Vance is a good.
It is a good come down, but it's not
a good palate cleanse. But he's
that crazy.
Yeah, no, he does some of this. He has some similar techniques, so it's good. And then I mean, obviously, if you like sci-fi fantasy, you can always turn to a Conan story if you want to turn your brain off a little bit and just have some fun. But if you're looking to just
if you want to get supple and lithe,
that's what it is. Yeah.
Got to.
Well, and then also I will say, going back to Lord of the Rings after reading Wolfe is always fun too, because again, it's all there, but Tolkien manages to give us layers to that story, which I've thought about Lord of the Rings in a different way ever since I've read Gene Wolfe, because like you can see the way he took Tolkien's whole, this is a translation of a ancient manuscript thing.
Yep.
He's incorporated that idea. So it's like there's obviously, and there's plenty of great books in the world. So a lot of people will read Wolfe and just be like, oh God, I just want to read something where they just tell me what happens and I know it's actually what happens.
Yeah, but, honestly, reading Wolfe is a chore, to be sure.
Sure.
But it's a fulfilling chore.
Yeah.
And delightful on the other end.
Yeah. It is funny for how difficult we were saying this, and we're about to dive into these actual chapters. I found especially chapter 3, but there were several moments in this book where, like, more than some other Wolfe novels, it was a page turner for me. But especially that third chapter, the way that's the narration is, that story is relayed, I was like, I can't get enough of this, and I like basically couldn't put the book down as we're going through that, especially because he's using that technique of the story you're getting being interrupted all the time, which just increases the suspense of what's actually going on here. But
that's cool.
I mean, we had, we were reading this book for a month, but just timing wise, I only really ended up, I think I probably read the whole thing in 3 or 4 sittings.
Yeah.
And the first chapter, the pacing of the way it was written took me a minute, because also just place in life that I am right now.
Yeah.
I found myself having to read aloud to myself because not because it was boring, but because of the flow of the writing and the kind of dreamlike flow state that the writing gets you into, that I was starting to fall asleep. Again, nothing because of the content was boring. It was just like,
it is a flow state. It's so weird.
I was put into a relaxed state that I literally had to sit there and read aloud to myself in order to not get so relaxed that I just fell asleep. But it did pick up after that, where that was no longer an issue. And I read something like 200 pages or something in, a day and a half, maybe. Which I know for some people is not much, but for me, that's a lot, especially with something as juicy as a Wolfe novel. But it picks up, and it's very, I don't want to say fast paced. But it is hard to put down.
It is. Interestingly, I found this one to be a faster read than some Wolfe, because I think with Wolfe, there's so much description where I have to read it slowly to just make sure I've got what's going on. Where there's lots of heavy moments of dialogue. I get really outside of that first chapter. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of and then there's a lot of like flowy pontificating paragraphs. And especially when I was just letting it wash over me, it read really quickly. Again, you might read it in chunks, shorter chunks. But as we move into it, this book is, I think the edition we read is like 300 pages. I think actually, when you don't include the afterword and where it starts, I think it's about 260 pages.
Yeah.
But it's broken into 5 chapters, 5 longer chapters. The first is about 40 pages or so. And then you've got the monster 90+ page second chapter, which was wonderful, but did just like, it was like, oh my God, this like, you get done with it and you're like, I'm halfway through the book now. This doesn't feel quite right. I'm like, okay.
I think he could have broken it up a tiny bit more, but yeah.
He could have, but I do think.
But I don't know where he would have is the thing.
I also don't know. Yeah. Well, and he could have done shorter chapters, a la like Stephen King, and had like the
little dot dots,
the little breaks just be chapters. But I think it works to have these things segmented with those breaks. So it's like while the chapters are long, there's lots of places in general to stop, natural places to stop and put the book down if you need or want to. But what's interesting is I think that writing style comes from Wolfe being a short story writer, where many and a lot of his short stories or novellas are in that 50 to 70 pages, but there aren't chapters. But that's a decent chunk of book, so he's used to breaking longer things down into other little segments. So, which again, I think sometimes that I wish more authors just wrote short stories. I really feel like, especially in genre fiction, your craft would just be honed if you have to tell a story quickly. And I just feel like that's a little lost art in a lot of writers, where the long novel and the novel series is the the meta of fiction currently. I think people have lost the art of communicating things quickly and giving a lot of detail for it too, where it's amazing to me how much, like, this is a 250 300 page book, and again, there's just so much stinking stuff in it. Again, it could be 5 times as long. But chapter 1 is titled Alden Dennis Weir, who we're not revealed that that's actually the name of the person we're reading, I think, until it's like 20 pages into all of it. But but that is the name of the man we're reading, and it starts with a tree falling. Eleanor Bold's tree fall.
An elm tree, right?
An elm tree. Yeah, an elm tree falls. And again,
which
when you
specifically is frequently planted in memorial of someone passing.
It is, yes.
So hint one right off the bat.
Hint one.
That he's a ghost.
Yes. Well, and when I did reread the first chapter after I finished, and obviously we've talked about this man being a ghost, but he basically says, like, in page 2 or 3, that, like, you can talk to doctors even though you're dead. Like, it's like he basically just says that, which again, when you read it the first time, you're like, oh yeah, whatever, okay, yeah,
sure, yeah,
dead, you can. Yeah, but it's like, okay, no, he basically just said it, but
he just said it.
Yeah, he just said it. Okay, but yeah, so chapter 1, a tree falls, and then the next segment we kind of dive into is this weird doctor's visit, where again, just there's a list of names of people we don't know given. And then the sort of 2 main things that happen in this book, alongside lots of digressions from Weir about the future of America and the history of America and all this stuff, we get a imagined, which I think I've come to feel that this is an imagined doctor's visit, or some astral version of a doctor's visit that never occurred, but that it's not how it reads. It reads as someone reliving a memory the first time you read it, or reimagining it. And then in this other thing, the rest of the book is stories and a Christmas visit at Grandpa's house. So what struck you guys? And Sam, I'll go to we can start with you, but what jumped out to you from this first chapter as you dived in it? And was there a part of that was most interesting or revealing, or what were your thoughts?
It is really difficult for me to remember what happened in each chapter.
Sure.
I mean, from the first chapter, it was like, oh, this is stream of consciousness. That was the main thing that jumped out to me, like, honestly. And then, thinking that I immediately started thinking he was in a coma the whole time.
Sure.
And that I was basically seeing the ruminations or the inside mind sort of map or dreamscape that someone in a coma was having, or a stroke. Right. And to me, also, in retrospect of this first chapter, I do wonder, because the mention of the stroke is so specific and so pronounced, that I do wonder if this has to do with one half of the brain's retelling of a life.
Interesting.
Because when I think of stroke, it 100% is that. You lose half of your brain, and it affects the opposite half of your body. So in this, I wonder if he's like, what if it's like half of your spirit affects the other half of your spirit? So you have like this disjointed retelling of it. So for me, that's where I feel like that reading chapter 1 more than any other chapter, like what is going on. I mean, I remember texting you like 10 pages in and being like, hey, peace is great, but I have no idea what's happening. And you're like, yeah, man, me too. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just letting it wash over me. I was like, what are we doing?
I know, right?
Yeah, so that's my take. Is that it was very stream of conscious, but in retrospect, I'm like wondering if the stroke has more significance in the overarching entire narrative than it does in just the mention of it. Because it's very mentioned, very pronounced, very like this is what happened in chapter 1, and then not really revisited with that same sort of emphasis
after that
ever. Like I mean, it's like half mentioned, but the emphasis is very, very pronounced in chapter 1. So
it's true.
I think the stroke has more to do with it than I thought before.
Steven, of the was there a moment that spoke to you more than any other in that first chapter, or anything that jumped out?
I think the doctor, the first doctor's visit, like Sam said, I mean, first of all, before he even goes to see the doctor, when he's sitting in the waiting room, he's listing off all of these characters' names that are sitting in the waiting room, but we have no idea who they are. That felt significant.
Yes.
But it was a significant where like this feels significant, but I have no idea what the fuck it means. Yeah.
Try to remember this.
Yes. And it was kind of similar with the stroke, where I still don't I agree with Sam. Like I feel like there is a significance to the stroke that I haven't quite put my finger on.
Yeah.
Like a more meta or spiritual significance to the stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is brought up more times throughout the book, but I will say that on one read through, I do not have a firm enough grasp on the timeline of Weir's life to even really be able to say when this stroke occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And like how much longer he lived post stroke.
Right.
So
did the stroke kill? Yeah.
Because it could have been like stroke for like 30 minutes and then dead after that.
Yeah, right. Or people have strokes and then they live another 20, 30 years.
Absolutely.
So that whole scene, obviously the significance of the characters became more apparent as the rest of the book went through, but I still don't feel like I've fully grasped the significance of the stroke itself. And then the only other part of the first chapter that really stuck with me, and I can't even really 100% say for why, except for one thing that you brought up, Daniel, but the Christmas with Grandpa.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the first time I remember piecing together that he is with his aunt.
Yeah.
And not his mother.
Yep.
And then you made mention of a fascinating little thing that is obviously purposeful on Wolfe's part, where Grandpa makes mention of Santa Claus having been there.
Yes.
So it's the little boy Christmas thing where a kid comes downstairs.
Yes.
It's still the night of Christmas. Presents are under the tree.
Yes.
Grandpa's sitting there.
Because he's not at his house. He's like, does Santa know we're here? He's basically like this.
it's the classic little kid sneaking down to spy on if the presents are under the tree, and Grandpa is still there, and he makes mention of Santa Claus having been there, but instead of saying Saint Nick, he says Old Nick, which, as you pointed out, Daniel, is the devil, that's
a name for the devil,
kind of folksy term for the devil.
Yeah.
Which is another probably little hint that not only is Alden dead, but he's not in the good place.
No, he's not in a good place. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think we're introduced before the story of the before his remembrance of his Christmas with his grandpas. We get that doctor's visit. So then we get that, we really zoom in on that scene. And you get this little lovely Christmas gift scenario, but you do get this unsettling on, as you think about it, Old Nick reveal. And then it ends with the Irish caretaker telling the story of a banshee. and
Right.
And it's like you end up, this like lovely little Christmas scene ends with this really strange, it's like a very strange story to tell a kid also of a banshee that's haunting a family, and this man who keeps getting beat up by the banshee to give up names and all this stuff. And then it's finally revealed that the banshee predicts that the man's gonna birth the Antichrist, which is another one it's like, with a mention of the Old Nick, with a mention of you'll birth the Antichrist, there's a lot of, it's just, the more you think about it, the more it's like, that's really weird, that's really strange. And that's again, it's another one of those moments where you're like, what am I reading? And
I know that there's some people that take those and take it to the next level of saying that Alden himself is a devil or Antichrist figure. I don't know. I don't think that I agree that far, but I think that to me, it definitely is foreshadowing or an indication of where the direction that Alden's life went, and the final resting place of his soul in this story.
Yeah. I think the other thing that, and this is, and two things, and I would love, as we think of them, as we work through the book, there's so many digressions, and there are two digressions in the first chapter that I just really stuck out to me as like just absolutely beautiful writing, where really early on he does these two digressions, one on that we Americans are the magical people, and he's imagining, which as we come to kind of think about later, I think that he's obviously been dead for some time. And so he's thinking about a future America where they're digging up the ruins of our civilization, and they'll think of us as like basically Americans as some sort of future version of the Egyptians or the ancient Greeks, that people will be like, wow, this amazing people. And I will say, I just found that writing, although I think it's very important thematically for the book, because I do think it's a book that's about America, and about, like, as much as like Alden is maybe a stand-in in some ways for the idea of America and the transition that happened in the last century. But I really just love that digression. And then similarly, the weird speculative fiction point when he's like, we were deprived of the red people and the brown people and the blue people, and like starts imagining the racial tropes of like the green people, that, you know, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there were green people who were thrifty with money but always get in fights and all this. Like, again, that section was bizarre, and I do think sets up some things later where he's going to end up, there's lots of stereotypes in history about the Irish, which I think there's something about that. Well, obviously it becomes important later, but then there's also lots of weird stereotypes about Jewish people in the book. And I think that's our first imagining of these ideas for him, where he's sort of thinking through the importance of, for him, and his enjoyment in stereotyping and his enjoyment in thinking through those things. But especially at the beginning of the book, I was like, this is such a funny little imagining the russet brown people and their like noble savagery and stuff. It was very. I thought that was very. I just thought that was an interesting little couple paragraphs. But
definitely. That was another section that was, reading through. It was like, this is significant, but I don't know why.
I don't know why. Yeah. But as it ends, we get back. The first chapter ends with we're back in the doctor's office. They're talking, and interestingly, the doctor, and this is something I didn't pick up on until I was reading about it later. The doctor's like, okay, I know you're asking about the stroke, this future stroke you're gonna have, but he's like, I want you to look at these cards and just tell me who they remind you of. And I don't know if they're supposed to be sort of like Rorschach cards.
Yeah,
it's kind of was my interpretation.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Ink blot kind of things.
But some people take the book that we get after that is him talking about the people these cards make him think of. That's the frame for the story, which is an interesting idea. And that's not something I really like, because we do cut from that scene right into everything else. And I think that's probably basically right. That maybe everything we're getting is him in this Dr. Van Ness's office, going through his life, because it does then center around like, he's been shown a block, and then the first one reminds him of his aunt, the next one reminds him of Julia Smart, the third one reminds him of the Golds, and then the fourth one reminds him of himself, maybe. So again, I'm not sure that's exactly right, but I think that is maybe the frame of the book we're reading, which again is something that's just sort of given to us and you have to sort of think about. It's never made explicit, and I'm not even 100% that's right, but I do think that's I think it's an interesting
that checks some boxes for me, though.
Yeah,
because if we're assuming, if we're going down the road of Alden Weir is dead, Alden Weir is either in hell or at the very least in purgatory, and starting that journey of having to face and atone for things.
Yep.
It would make sense then if the people that he is seeing in these kind of ink blot pictures, because it's an interesting question, because I've never done any of those sorts of tests, but any of them I've ever seen or heard of, it's never asking you like, who does this remind you of? It's always like, what do you see? Like, much more open-ended. And so it does feel like his whatever is left of his consciousness is being guided towards, hey, here are the things that you have to reckon with before whatever else is next can happen.
And I think we can take it,
seeing those people,
and I think we can take it that the first one he saw, he's like, oh, that's my super sexy aunt.
Yeah.
And so I guess that takes us to chapter 2, which is titled Olivia, who come to find out is his aunt. And then I guess the other thing that is a good time, because it's actually revealed really in this it's revealed in this next chapter, that the other thing that's really important from chapter 1 is that there was a birthday party when Alden was maybe 5, at his parents' house, where this is not made explicit, but you get the sense that there's an argument at the house, and it's basically they're looking at a picture of his uncle, and the kids are making fun of the painting or throwing things at it, something like that, and then Alden starts a scuffle to defend his uncle and the picture of his uncle. And again, it's never made explicit, but the boys are arguing and they fall, and then we come to find out that the boy that's in the argument, again, it's never made explicit, but it's said that it's intimated, and you have to parse this out, but that there was a scuffle, that boy fell, he was injured, and it's later revealed in sort of, again, all little side statements, that Bobby Black died at this party, which again, you think about being 5 years old and having a kid die at a birthday party. It's
pretty crazy.
That's a really big deal. And it's a really big deal that Alden won't say it. He won't say that happened, and he won't say that basically he caused it. Again, it sounds accidental, and it sounds like really truly a tragedy. But again, he's not
an
able
accidental tragedy that's never dealt with in his life, because we also find out and piece together that pretty much immediately after that, his parents up and fuck off to Europe.
And it's
Right.
said
For
that
years.
yes, it's said that in a sticky social situation, they pawned him off on his aunt, who's in her 20s or so, and he goes to live with her. They're not even staying at his house, and they leave. So there's some. It's one of those things that, again, like on the first read, I just blew past basically all of that. Like, you get that the parents leave, and like that's odd. But then it's like, okay, they're on vacation, and then it come to find out they're gone for, yes, they're gone for years. They're not checking in. He's even going back to his house to peer in the windows to make sure they're actually not there.
Right.
Right.
Again, like, again, it's one of these things that this is one that just it's a detail of Wolfe's writing that, like, he doesn't. A lot of authors would say, my parents left and I was super troubled, and this really bothered me, and they left me, and this horrible thing happened. And like that's the book they would write, and that's compelling enough. But the book Wolfe wants to write is that happens. That is absolutely 100% what happened in real life. There was a horrible accident, and the parents abandoned their kid to go get away from this scenario. And this did break him, but we're getting an author of this story who can't express those feelings anymore because they're so painful that he's basically almost forgotten exactly even what happened, or again, can't say it, won't say it. And like that's the background of I really think basically the entire book, and like that's the inflection point in Alden's life. His parents abandoned him after he killed a boy, and I think killed a boy is right. I don't think he murdered him, and I don't think saying more than that. But it's interesting. In the book, we get very little about his parents. We get no time of him growing up with his parents, because the time they were away is what defined his life, not his time with them.
Yeah.
Well,
and outside of just some biologically formative years, he didn't even have, he wouldn't have many memories with them, to say nothing of just them being too painful to recall any of them because of the treatment afterwards.
Yep.
Well, so as we get into that second chapter, which is all about Olivia, it's really all centered around Olivia's suitors, and it's framed on around the three men who, based on timelines that people have built for the book, most people think this is in the 20s, so it's before the Depression. So the country's in a height post World War One. Things are going well, and for America, and then at this time it was also pretty common, if you were a single woman, like you would date potentially a number of people, and again, they wouldn't have said date, but there would be men you were interested in as you try to figure out who you were going to be with, and they would call on them. But we get the story of three different suitors. Professor Peacock is the first, who's an academic man, and it's kind of we get a lovely little story with them, and then we move to James McAfee, the store owner, and then Mr. Blaine, the banker. Each of them important figures in the town in their own right, but they're really, we kind of progress through each one, and it's interesting where Peacock ends up being especially at the time when you're reading it, is the one that seems to have the most the best relationship with, but he also with Olivia, but he's also got, he's a professor and the least prospects, and he lives further away. Well, then James McAfee is a working man and owns a store and is well off, and then Blaine is a rich banker. And so, and Blaine ends up being the one that Weir admires the most, which is also another sign that Blaine is not a good guy. And it's another sign that Weir is not he's not admiring the right things about people. But
along those lines too, it is interesting that the majority of the info that we get about his aunt, who I think is my read on her, is she's doing the best that she can.
Yes.
With this situation of raising her sister's child. But it is interesting.
Yes.
Learning what we learn further down about Weir's character, that the recollections that he has, the largest recollections he has of his aunt that he feels like sharing in this story, are all centered around the other men that are trying to bang his aunt.
Yeah.
His mind is in a certain place.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. So to talk generally about it, and we can talk specifically about each of the guys. Was there a section of this book, because it really is 3 chunks? It's Professor Peacock and their picnic to the cave. It's the hunt for the egg, which kind of starts and then goes away and then comes back at the end with James McAfee. And then it's the trip to Blaine's house where he rides ponies and stuff. Was there one of those you found the most interesting? I mean, and they were honestly all pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Was there a segment of that you that spoke to you the most, starting with you, Stephen?
I'd say that there was moments in all 3 of them. I thought that the finding the cave, in the beginning with Professor Peacock,
such a funny name too.
I know, it sounds like a Clue character.
It does.
He definitely did it.
He definitely did it. They definitely did it. But that cave, where he finds the human skull and doesn't tell anybody about it, which is weird.
Also weird.
It's a weird kind of psychopathic behavior. And the later references to Tom Sawyer that fit in with that cave are interesting. But there's that moment. Certainly the egg story is weird and interesting, but most specifically when they actually go to the house,
I loved that part of the book.
Is a great piece. And I thought the most interesting part of that, and another part that was kind of a little unsettling in weird ways, was when Weir leaves the house and goes out to the barn to try to find the egg. There was a lot of weird stuff going on there. And then there's just some bullshit that happens at the house. What's his name's house?
Blaine's.
At Blaine's house. Just rich person bullshit. Of they arrive at the same time as one of Blaine's employees, and was supposedly supposed to have dropped stuff off earlier, but it really feels like Blaine kind of orchestrates the whole thing to make himself seem important, and just refuses to let this poor vice president or whatever he is leave his house,
go have dinner with his wife,
to go have dinner.
Definitely definitely a Baldoni vibe for sure.
Yeah, 1000%.
I will say I really like getting caught up with a work thing with your boss is like totally normal, but it's like I just can't imagine going. Your boss is like, "Hey, I need these papers. I need this information. Can you run these to my house?" And you're like, "Okay, yeah, of course." You get them ready. It ends up obviously the guy's like, it took way longer than I thought, because like obviously he didn't ask for something that's just like you grab it. It's something he's got to gather and compile, so it takes ages. Then you finally get it over there and you're like, okay, here's the stuff, and then it's something they've actually got to like talk about and look through. But then he's like, you get there and you're like, oh hey, oh no, I've invited my lady friend over. And so, oh no, we got to look at this, but we've got to host them too. So come in. No, come in, and you're gonna.
We'll
eat
do it
with
after
me.
dinner.
You're gonna eat with me, and we'll talk about this later. And it's like, and
This poor
honestly,
sap.
I know it's like I was like I just can't even imagine. Like, oh my god, like, do I really have to just sit here with this
Oh,
guy?
sir, literally, my wife literally has dinner waiting for me.
I know. I really have to get home. Like, please, okay, all right. But then, and then because of the times, I really think the main thing was it would be a little untoward, I think, for her to come inside,
Yeah.
and like for them to be alone and all that. So then, but having his employee there makes it all, oh, now it's like a dinner party.
Totally
It's
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. So he's just put this guy out so that he can hang out with the girl he likes and also make himself look important. And I'm Mr. Smart Man, big man, but also going on, and I don't really know anything about business. And actually, it turns
Right.
out
Oh, I got all my money. Everything's from my
I know,
dad. It's
Then he tries to pull the whole thing like, I'm actually an artist, really, at heart.
Yes, I'm really.
Shut the fuck up, dude.
It's so great. Well, and then it turns out his family gets money because they basically like robbed the land from the native people in the area, and that's the reason the Blaines are rich.
Yeah.
And then they get even richer later in the story because they're one of the few banks that don't close, so they buy up all the land in the area again during the Depression. It's just like, yeah, these are
the worst kind of people.
These are not good people.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So funny.
But no, the hunt for the egg. And Sam, I don't want to gloss over what you found important, but I love the hunt for the egg.
Yes.
The stuff about McAfee's little store is great.
It's essentially like a little Fabergé egg, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's Chinese. It's not
Chinese,
Russian,
but it's like an ostrich egg. But same idea, yeah. But it's been painted.
Same
and
idea.
Decorated. Yeah. But
I mean, they talk about it like it's a pillow, which is so weird. But
yeah, it is. But then it also turns out it's porcelain. It's actually not a real egg. Like, a lot of people think it's a real egg, but it's totally just a created piece. But that part, and when the Margaret the girl Margaret character like comes into focus, I found all that fascinating. It read so much like the way my memories of being a kid are, where you're like implanted in a situation, and again, it's sort of out of your control, and you're just sort of making the best of it, and you're stuck, and they end up staying at this house, which again, I did love. Again, there's so much old American history in this, where like they end up having to, it rains really hard as they're going out to see these people that have this egg they want to buy. And because it's raining so hard, they can't leave. So the people are just like, you have to stay with us. And it's so funny the way like that is a thing that was relatively normal, that you would just end up staying with people that you didn't even know that well. And but that feels so bizarre. Like, that just would not happen nowadays. And I found those little details very transporting. And I just found it really enjoyable just on that level, just getting the details of life that felt really real and lived in.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy fiction that does that, that gives you like, I really felt out of our current headspace. And a lot of old works just, they import modern sensibilities backwards, or then they give you details about the past to scoff at them. Look at the backwards way people used to think. And Wolfe just consistently avoids that. And sometimes he presents those details and lets you think about them, and they are backwards and weird. And it is like, wow, I can't believe that stuff used to happen. But that's never the point. And personally, I find that sort of that goal, that being the main goal in giving old details, I just find it tiresome in general. But yeah. So Sam, things that stuck out to you from Olivia's suitors.
I mean, are we talking about the main protagonist of the story yet?
Well, we're not getting to Julius Smart just yet, but we will be there in short order.
Yeah, well, he's the only one that matters, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Turns out. Although I will say, I mean, we can pivot to that pretty soon. But Julius Smart, it is really funny to me that like there's a little throwaway line about this character in the 3rd chapter, which is in the middle of the book, that he is the central figure, which I'm pretty sure is also just a Wolfe joke, that this this is the middle of the book.
Yeah. Center.
Yeah.
This is the central figure.
Central figure. This is the central figure.
Because he appears literally midway through.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think Steven took all mine. Like I all of those stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Which I think lends to that's how the story is.
Sure.
You know, Mr. T was the creepiest thing ever.
Yeah.
And that whole like house scene and all that. I mean, I don't know if that was in Olivia's chapter right before it.
No, that's chapter 3. So before we move on to chapter 3 fully,
yeah,
I did love when he's at Blaine's house and he goes to ride.
So Blaine's house and the cave are very cool.
That's chapter 2. Yeah, that's all
like,
good.
So the scene that like obviously makes me think he's a psychopath is when they're like, "Oh, you should cut the rope when we're over the ledge," and he's like, "I actually thought that they meant cut the rope, but I knew they were joking, but I still wanted to."
I still thought about it.
This is a demented little kid. He's like, I knew they were joking, but I still wanted to cut the rope and let them fall.
I wanted to cut the rope and see what would happen. Yeah. But
it's pretty fucked, yeah.
But before we move fully into chapter 3, at Stuart Blaine's house, I really enjoyed the Finn McCool story that the groundskeeper tells. Yeah. The weird story of the guy in the stone boat who's going to America with the Rat King and the cat weird. and then like the story is supposed to be about the dog, but then he's like, no, because
bro, that was like a Fawford and Grey Mouser story.
It was so great. It was so great. Yeah, I love that story.
I remember that. That was so short and like weird.
Yeah, I mean this book is full of weird little fairy tales too. But that was just a moment I wanted to mention before we moved on. So getting into chapter 3. Chapter 3 centers mostly around a dinner party where Julius Smart, who we're told is actually the man who is ugly and somewhat of a hunchback, but he's a chemist. We come to find out he's the one that ends up winning Olivia's hand. And most of this chapter is about him telling a story. And there are a few other stories before his gets going, but his is the main.
Well, this chapter is called The Alchemist, right?
It's called The Alchemist, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, it is. But it's we get the story of how Julius Smart became a chemist. Or I shouldn't really say a chemist, a
pharmacist.
A pharmacist, really. And I guess maybe same difference there. But he talks about having to go find a gig, and the only place that'll give him work is this weird store where he sees a woman with no arms and her hands just coming out of the kind of like
so weird,
kind of like this, like a seal lady. And it's run by this man who's like gangly and super tall. And I really did find the way Mr. T was described like instantly as like just so like very slender man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Energy, yeah. Or the giant from Twin Peaks, if you've seen Twin Peaks. That was the big energy, and it just everything about this story just gave me the absolute creeps. And it's being presented to us as a thing that's actually happened to Smart. And I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to make of all that. Like how
this was definitely the most horror story part of the book to me.
Yes. There were a few moments where I was genuinely like when there's the wet stuff on the pillow, it's just like, oh, just like,
it felt very, it felt very, Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson was what it reminded me of a lot.
Yes.
That whole piece. And, that was written in the 50s, I believe. So doubtless Wolfe had read that.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's I don't know if it's Dickensian, but there's some ghost story vibes there, maybe just a smidge, but but basically it's the story of him becoming his apprentice and then going to live in this man's house where he won't eat food because he believes a ghost is poisoning the food he eats. And so,
and not just poisoning him, it's a poison. It's like a what's the disease in Game of Thrones? The stone skin.
It's basically that.
disease.
Yes. What is that called in Game of Thrones?
Grayscale.
Grayscale. Yeah, he's
I
essentially
don't know
got grayscale.
I don't know how I knew that so fast.
Good
That
job.
was good. That was good.
Like,
that was one of those that I would have remembered that.
Out of me.
I would have remembered that as soon as we stopped recording.
Although obviously grayscale is a fictional disease, I do believe the ossification of your organs is a real thing that can happen.
Yes.
There is a real disease where I'm not sure about your skin as much, although your skin is an organ as well, but like but there is there's actually a really funny version of this story where this paranoid man who has some other really weird details going on, he's actually not being poisoned possibly, and is potentially just has a disease and is applying all this outside meaning to it.
The only thing I would push back against that is that throughout the course of this story, we Smart meets again the seal lady.
Yes.
Which I'm not trying to be derogatory. It is how she is described. She's a carny.
She calls herself the seal lady, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's a works. She's how she self-identifies as seal lady.
Well, it turns out she's a carny.
Yeah, a carny. She works in like a freak show kind of thing at a early, turn of the century carnival kind of situation.
Oh my God.
But in the course of meeting her and some other of the carnies, one of the other fellas there has this same kind of grayscale thing, and he gets the medication.
Yeah.
We find out that Mr. T is providing chemicals and medications to these carnies that are making the seal lady's son. He's giving him a bunch of crazy stuff to make his hair grow out, can become like a wolf dog boy kind of thing. And then we meet this other character that has this stone skin thing, but it's implied that like he can stop taking the medicine if it gets too far and it starts going away. So there is something going on where it's like the doctor could seemingly reverse this thing that he's got. By like just stopping making the medicine.
Yeah.
But like, because like whatever this ghost thing is, which we'll get to, that supposedly is taking this grayscale medicine and poisoning his food with it. Like the pharmacist is making it. Mr. T is making it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so if Mr. T would just quit making the fucking serum and like, oops, sorry, I can't sell you this serum, carnies, but like I'm being killed by it, so I gotta press pause for a second.
It's so funny.
So it's just weird.
It's very strange. It is also really well, we can talk more about it now, but it is really so okay, yeah. So he says, okay, I'll hire you and I'm gonna pay you really well. I need an assistant because turns out because he's turning to stone, Mr. T, and he's very tall, he like can't hinge at he's kind of a tree beard as well. He's like, he can't bend, and he can't barely care for himself anymore because of this condition he's got now. And he ends up saying that he's haunted by a ghost that is poisoning his food to give him this condition. But he invites Smart and he says, I'll give you free room and board. You can come live with me. And then they have a whole situation where they eat food and they swap food. And there's a little mystery about which food,
you know what it reminded me of, this whole thing of like, why would Smart say yes to living in this dude's house, in this haunted house? And there's the meme going on right now with 2025 housing prices and everything of the millennials living in a haunted house because the rent is super cheap.
I mean,
and just being like, yeah, who gives a shit if this house is haunted? It's really cheap to live here.
Well, right. Because it turns out the first night then there's more in there. He like sticks a syringe in an orange because he's like, this is why I'm not going to eat oranges, because look, you can do it and you can barely tell that it's been tampered with, so that's why I don't eat oranges. And then eventually, so they go to bed. He goes to sleep and then finds oozy liquid on his pillow, which again, like at this point, I would just not stay in this house.
I think I'm gonna go. Yeah,
that would be the moment I'm like, I can't. I can't do this.
I'll clock in tomorrow, but I'm gonna go sleep on the sidewalk. That seems
I'm not
safer.
staying here. But then on top of that, that happens, and he comes out, and Mr. Smart's just standing there in the hallway with a light, being like, "Did you hear something?"
Yeah. Did you
see
like,
something?
And then he says,
and then he's like, "Did you see her?
Yeah,
Did you see her?" I'm like, "I'm gone,
Fuck,
bro."
dude.
Like,
Yeah,
what
I'm
the fuck?
again.
Like,
I'm already leaving now. And then,
Yeah.
but then then he's like, he's standing there shirtless, and then he says, "Come touch my side," and he puts his hand, and he's like touching his like scaly,
and he's like, "Your side feels
damp-
like cement." Yeah,
ugh,
like
wet cement skin, and it's again like that's the third or fourth or fifth thing where I'm like,
Yeah.
I am not staying in this
And
house.
like literally, his response is like, "Man, that's crazy. I'm tired. I'll see you
I'm
tomorrow.
gonna go to bed.
I'm gonna go to sleep, bro." And like just like zonks out. Like,
A story it's so bizarre. But again, I think we're supposed to somewhat take it on face value. Although again, there's some things about it that just like it's so not right. But then he goes to work the next day. Mr. Smart, excuse me,
Mr. T.
Mr. T is nowhere to be found. The seal lady shows up and is in a panic. And turns out they've given too much of the medicine, which included some opium to settle the dog boy's stomach. But Stephen had a great point where she's mixed up tablespoons and teaspoons, and then is also given way too much of the medicine. Because it was she even says like, if a little is good, a lot will be better, which again is not, it's just not how drugs work.
It's not how medicine works.
It's not how medicine works. But so they can't find Mr. T, but he does know how to help. So finally goes off, and that's where we get to see a lot more of the Carney, and we get a lot more information that we've already talked briefly about all this stuff about where she enjoys being special, and she wanted that for her kid, which is why she's giving him medicine to make him hairy, which is again just so very strange. But after they get it sorted out, where he's basically kidnapped to go to do this, like he's taken against his will to help. He gets back, and then it turns out, Mr. T has died in his room. And and then come to find out, like, the family basically gives him the at least.
But before the giving it, there's another important revelation that we referenced earlier with the thing of like, this is the ghost, the only ghost that's mentioned is maybe not actually a ghost.
Yes. But this is revealed in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the spectral force being thing, the did you see her? Did you hear anything that laid in his bed with him and wetted the pillow? That wasn't an ectoplasm. He finds there's this other room.
Yep.
Right.
That was locked that he opens up and sees this Frankensteinish tank.
Yeah.
With a woman in it.
Yep.
That presumably was Mr. T's wife that we've heard referenced over and over again, that supposedly had died. And it seems as if it's kind of, again, some kind of Frankenstein meets Jane Eyre thing where his wife is locked away and he's doing these experiments on her with this medicines that he's then selling to the carnies, but then she's getting out and poisoning his food every night. This is just bizarre. But yeah, so it's like it was never, at least in a ghost capacity, it was very much was fucked up.
Yes. Yes. And it's actually funny. It is funny the way it's presented as a ghost story, but it's really either a Frankenstein or a zombie story on some level.
Sure, but and again, like Jane Eyre is on the mind because our wives' book club just read Jane Eyre, but
just read Jane Eyre,
Mr. Rochester's insane first wife, still lives locked up in the tower, but she escapes frequently and is running through the halls, and it is very haunted house kind of ghost-like because nobody's acknowledges that this is happening or that she's even there.
Yeah. No, very, 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 very similar energy there, except for Mr. Smart doesn't want to marry Mr. T, thankfully.
Right. That would have been a phenomenal addition.
That would have been an interesting twist. Oh! stopping the wedding.
The gay courtship of the
oh my gosh. But then
Frankenstein monster comes down to stop the wedding.
Yeah. There's a funny detail here too where Mr. T's nowhere to be found. So he, instead of, he can't find him, he can't get to the door. So then he like climbs around the house and through the window to where he finds him dead. And then he like ends up getting in touch with his family. And they're like, you just run the, you run the store and we'll take care of you until we can sell it. And, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it all just works out very conveniently to where part of me wonders if Smart, I don't know. There's something there that doesn't add up. And again, we've talked about this, on our own a couple weeks ago, but like, on some ways it's like maybe Smart is maybe the best guy in this book and a good man. But then there's also some part of me wonders if he finished off Mr. T. Obviously he's got a zombie wife, undead wife living in juice that maybe that's who killed him finally. It's like, it's so hard to say, but it works out so well in this really weird scenario that especially like it works out where he's figured out also like it makes me wonder like, oh, I now know Mr. T's business. I now know he makes all these concoctions for the carnies to make them hairy and weird. So like he doesn't need him anymore. So I just don't know about all that. That's something when I reread this book, that's something I'm going to be looking for and thinking about is what do I think about Mr. Smart? Because I just don't know how to feel about all that. It's too strange.
My initial feeling here on this end of it after the first reading, I still think so. We should point out that of all of the suitors in that second chapter, where Smart is not even referenced yet, Julius Smart is the one that actually does marry
his
aunt.
Yes.
And it seems to me that I still am kind of the mind that Julius Smart was a good man, at least a decent man.
Sure.
That just happened to have some wild life experiences.
Very possible.
And I think that perhaps my reading of it felt like the things that felt super weird about him was more us reading into Weir's feelings about him, because
Sure.
it's around this point that we really start kind of getting hammered home that Alden Weir has sexual feelings towards his aunt.
Yes. Right.
And that there's a resentment towards the man that actually finally ended up marrying her.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
It wasn't Weir himself that ended up getting to have her in that way.
Yes. Well, yeah, because we get, and I think it's revealed in the next chapter that Weir would see his aunt in the bath when he was with her, and then sees her later on. And again, yeah, all of it is it ends up being, he's uncomfortable living with her as a young person because he's away from his parents and he feels like he's a burden to her. But then it turns out that again, he really fixates on how beautiful he finds her. And then it turns out he's seen her naked on multiple occasions. And this is where some people do hypothesize that there was either a molestation or, again, I don't know how I feel about that personally, whether there was something there, but I think it's definitely that he fixated on her. And I think that's probably most of it, but I don't know. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I don't know that I fall into the camp of I don't think that anything did happen, and I think that obviously shouldn't that's the way that it should be.
Should
but given what we are given what we are gathering about Alden Weir's personality and his character up to this point, it feels like he certainly had an obsession and then a resentment because nothing happened.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So yeah, chapter 3 is fascinating.
Yes,
there's several other stories that happen, but the Mr. T Smart story is definitely the main focus, and that was probably my favorite part of the book.
I think that is my favorite chapter. It's either, I mean, 2, 3, and 4 were all very good. There are parts of 4 I really, really enjoyed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But 3, I do. 3 was just a total page turner, and the ghost story and everything it sort of reveals, and it comes out of nowhere. I didn't to say it. I mean, it's funny. I was about to say I didn't see it coming, but I didn't see anything in this book coming. So,
yeah,
it's hard to say. It's hard to really make a distinction there, but yeah, that's Julius Smart. So then, the next chapter is titled Gold, which it is interesting to get a chapter called The Alchemist, and then the next chapter is called
immediately
Gold.
after.
Yeah.
Where,
again, all the details in this book, we're talking about things being. We're talking about the details of them, but they're revealed in such little drip feed fashion and all out of order, and not usually in the order that we're talking about them. But the next chapter is the story mostly centering around the Gold family, and I really enjoyed this portion of the book, but it's really where it, like, obviously we get the weird haunting story, but this is where, like, the details of the things going on in Castiansville are like, this is like, it's not a good situation. Weir's working in the factory that you come to find out that Smart has made a successful business. Weir is working there. He's working there with a member of the Gold family, the son, who he tells us is a Jewish immigrant family, but then goes on about how they didn't really seem Jewish. All that stuff is very strange. And then he goes on a little, gallivant with a librarian because they want to find a diary, because the elder Gold runs a bookstore and specializes in special and rare books. And then it turns out that he again, to just kind of get there, he's a forger. And he's forging books, which again we find out that this whole convoluted narrative with Lois the librarian and their sort of romantic entanglement, which is strange. And then he really finds this out because it turns out that Stuart Blaine had bought a book from the same man, and the son is worried about this. And then Weir, through some investigations, becomes pretty certain that the book he bought was a forgery. And then the diary of Catherine Boyne, again, all these details are like, they make sense more in the context of the book, but it's all relatively convoluted, and Weir gets to play detective for a little bit, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, but it's convoluted in a different way, it feels like, from the rest of the book, because like you said, this is where it well, we've referenced it. It's all out of order, but it's brilliantly written in the way that just it doesn't matter the continuity of the timeline so much, because the way that Wolfe wrote it, the disconcerting nature and the uncomfortable feelings throughout this book escalate as it continues. And chapter 4 for me really kind of solidified that.
Yes.
Because I think it's either in the end of chapter 3 or in chapter 4, like we mentioned. Not only has he been purposefully seeing his aunt naked, but he sees her again.
Yes.
When she's a little older and she's been married to Smart for a while, and he makes some very derogatory references to her looks. And so chapter 4, and as it continues, it really for me was where it really solidified, like, oh, he has turned out to he's not a good man. He's not a good person.
No.
And I think we can address now that you kind of referenced it a little bit with Bobby Black earlier, but it is pretty. It seems pretty universally acknowledged that Weir probably killed 3 people at least throughout the course of this story.
Yes,
and
one will come up in the next chapter, but when we come to find out through this hunt for this diary, it's an important person in the history of the town. The librarian is trying to buy this diary for the library. She wants it though because it ends up being that there's this whole chance that she found gold or knew where gold was buried, and we get this whole gold hunt between him and the librarian. And it ends with
which is ironic considering the gold hunt that he goes on later.
I know, right?
With the Gold family.
Yes. But it's left off the page, but it's revealed that she brought a gun because she was worried that that he would want to take the money for herself, and then again, it's interesting. We talk about this being decided upon. I listened to, and I will say, I listened to a podcast detailing the events of the book and working through it. It's the Gene Wolfe Literary Podcast. They do a really detailed breakdown of Peace. It's a really enjoyable listen, but I also pretty much disagree with their like reading of the book when they come to like finalize it, because they don't think Weir killed anybody other than Bobby Black, and I just think that's wrong, especially because they go to get the gold together. He says she left town, and then Weir has the gun. So their reading of it is he just took the gun from her in an altercation, and then they parted ways. But I
feel like if that's what happened, he would have talked about that. He would have detailed that
again.
That
and
altercation.
He says she leaves, but she says she leaves to people that he just doesn't want to worry about it.
Well, and it's such a throwaway line.
Yes.
Of this woman that has seemingly been an important character in this chapter. Oh, she just left.
But like I just and again, people did up and move in that time more than they do nowadays. But it's just I think when you think about it, you are supposed to realize he's killed her. He's killed her.
Well, and the gun is the smoking gun, literally.
It's the smoking gun. I mean, he has the gun. Like there's no way that's not what happened. But the reveal of this information comes when he ends up having sex with a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah. There's the other big key moment of like, oh,
okay.
So this is who Mr. Weir is.
Yeah.
He's a bad guy.
He is not a good guy. But and that whole scene is fascinating and icky. And Sherry Gold is vile. Yeah. And Sherry Gold is also a troubled young woman, I think. Again,
Certainly.
I don't know what of her speech we're getting is like accurate to what happened. You can imagine that these, like, some of the things she ends up saying, you can imagine pretty easily that Weir is maybe putting in her mouth and maybe weren't actually said. But it's also very possible that a young woman that thinks the way she does is the kind of person that might end up in this situation as well. Even though Weir, as the adult, should obviously never do that when she's coming to confront him to try to save her father's reputation, and then he, takes advantage of her no matter how willing she was, or however you want to phrase that.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he does that and then immediately goes to try to talk to her parents is really another one that's like,
it's fucked up. Is that like the most psychopath behavior that I've maybe ever read of?
It shows, at least in his recollections, there's no guilt. There's no shame about what happened at all.
Which I have a kind of closing thoughts on that remind me if I don't remember to bring it up.
Yeah.
That kind of goes along with.
But there is a really funny scene when he gets to the house where the mom's like, I'm psychic. And he's like, oh, really? That's maybe bad. There's definitely like a sense of like, that is potentially very bad news.
Not that great of a psychic.
I know. but then not that great of a psychic. But then the scene with Mr. Gold, and their like final altercation, because he has one at the shop where he reveals he knows he's a forger, and then he goes back to talk to him again. And I really enjoyed that scene where he's kind of being Mr. Detective, but then there's some really fascinating stuff where he starts to reveal that I'm a forger, but I believe my forgeries are more true than the lies, which again, I really think there's some central ideas where to what this book is, where I think these ghostly memories are potentially, it's like his ghost self. He's trying to forge his own life.
He is a forger.
He is a forger,
especially because of this guilt that he obviously has that he's not acknowledging. He's forging a new history. I really got a chuckle out of Gold's saying that he had thought about forging some lost gospels, but there were just too many.
There were too many. Yeah. That's so funny. And then from there we get this really interesting story about the Venus de Milo and how, she was holding an apple and she's obviously a forgery. I haven't done any research on if there's any veracity to any of the things said there. I did find out that the whole breaking up statues to be sold in pieces, that is a real thing that happened.
Yeah, that felt very real.
But I don't know if there's any truth to the idea that the Venus de Milo might not actually be a piece of antiquity. And that it was recent. That one I don't know, but I did find all that stuff. It just reads very interesting and very, very fascinating. And then we find out he's like basically there's some really good like little H.P. Lovecraft stuff where like Mr. Gold has written the Necronomicon.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
It's super great. But Sam, any closing thoughts on chapter 4?
I don't have much more to contribute to it.
Okay.
I think you covered it.
Yeah. Steven, do you have anything left? Anything we didn't mention that you wanted to?
No, I'm glad that you mentioned the him being a forger, because there was him being Weir, that Weir himself was being a forger and making a forgery of his own life, because there was a very kind of game recognizes game feel to that whole conversation between Weir and Gold.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yep. I loved it. So it ends with the president. Weir has become the president of the company that Smart founded, and
he's the president of.
He is. They're making and there's just sort of a lot of interesting details where they're making Tang. They're making
the oranges have come back.
The oranges
Another references to oranges.
They're making orange juice from potatoes, and then we find out that the
alchemy
factory is alchemy. Yep, but this factory has basically destroyed the town, and it's all these Irish immigrants now have monocropping again. We get a story about how a boy died in the factory in the freezer. There's all these interesting details that's related to a
which almost certainly is the other murder.
Yes, but Weir had to be involved, if not directly responsible, was absolutely involved in this prank gone wrong. And again, it's another one where like it's a man, it's a ghost who can't come to terms with the unsavory details of his life, which I think is the only reason that I think he maybe isn't a true psychopath, at least in death, is because he can't deal with the bad things. The fact that the bad things are hidden, I think maybe a true psychopath, maybe at this point being dead, would just admit to them.
Or doesn't they don't register as bad, so
yes, or that's possible.
Maybe
that's something that happened. Yeah,
they're just they're just things that happened.
The element of guilt, I think, is a very big part of the whole story.
Absolutely. Well, and again, I think it's the guilt of the things he's done in life, the pain of his parents abandoning him, the loss of his aunt that he had fixations on, the loss of Margaret Lorne, his like young childhood sweetheart, who obviously realized Weir was a creep and wanted nothing to do with him. And then,
rightly so, he is super weird.
Yep. And then after the death of Julius Smart and his aunt, he inherits this company, and this company is also basically destroyed. While he's been wildly successful, it's destroyed it's basically destroyed the town and been a part of a huge part of the loss of the culture of the area and everything.
Which is very much ties into that interpretation that you referenced earlier about this story in a grander scale being a very American story.
And I think that's the heart of the book, or the like greater like reading of the story. But the beginning of this chapter is a really weird story about some carnival people. We have no idea who they are.
Except that it appears that it's
the dog boy's back. The dog
boy is writing a letter to Weir.
Yes.
And referencing a daughter, either of the dog boys or of Weir's, that is also now part of this carnival and in like a burlesque.
Yes. Well, yeah, we're given
or more explicit kind of show.
I will say that there's some really weird details in that story where the photographs, because this is the events of this part of the book are, I think, happening in the 70s. The photographs that he's given are like they're like old photos. So this is definitely the piece of the book I can make the least sense of. We get this weird story. It feels unstuck in time, and I don't get it. I don't really get what it is. And we get the story of this woman named Doris, who is the daughter of Mrs. Mason, and then there's a Mr. Mason, and he wants nothing to do with the girl, and the girl's trying to get set up with the giant guy, but then it turns out like it's very wicked stepmother sort of situation, with stepsisters and stuff. But then all that kind of culminates in her being like brutally killed, or excuse me, killing herself. She electrocutes herself. It's just really dark. It's like a horrible Cinderella inversion. But again, it's a very bizarre story. And again, this one I did read there. The theory is that the Doris character is potentially Weir's daughter, which is a really interesting idea to me, and ties in, I think, the fact that he would have abandoned his own kid or tried to just follow up with her, like really follows the pattern of things that have happened in his life. But again, it's still like that part of the story is just very, very bizarre to me. And I really have a hard time sort of making a lot of sense of it.
Yeah, it's one that requires another reading for sure.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago, of kind of some closing thoughts that I wanted to hit. It feels very much to me, kind of circling back to this notion of, is he a psychopath or what, and what kind of guilt is he feeling? What's he hiding? It seems very much my reading of it now, and we'll see how this changes on a further read of the book itself. But my read on the situation now is Alden Weir is dead. He may have been dead for a while, but it seems as though the falling of the elm tree, at the very beginning of the book, kind of wakens him up into whatever purgatory state he's in. And we know that Wolfe is a big Dickens fan. This feels very Christmas Carol.
It does
to me in a lot of ways. There's the Christmas reference earlier in the book. there's the kind of evils of industrialization and greed and money hoarding of resources. But more than that, this feels kind of to me like Alden Weir is maybe going through the journey that Jacob Marley has in Christmas Carol, but he's at the very beginning stages of that, where he's not even really able to acknowledge the guilt. And sort of in the same vein as how we, the readers of Wolfe, can't, and this Wolfe book in particular, we can't fully grasp what Wolfe was trying to say on a first read through. It feels very much to me like Alden Weir can't acknowledge his sins on the first telling of his own story. And it feels very much to me like this is going to be a cyclical thing of some, pitchfork wielding devil, like poking him. No, say it again. Do it again. Do it again. And which does feel a little more purgatory than hell. But I guess we don't know. It would that differentiation would be totally dependent on what happens after. Does he get to the point where he acknowledges it and then is able to move on and
to find
enter heaven? Or is he gonna acknowledge it and now, fuck you, buddy, you're stuck replaying and reliving this forever?
I think the one clue that there might be hope for Weir is that he's talking to a doctor. So I think that's the one piece of information we have, that maybe this is the beginning of a process that results in him finding peace.
Maybe.
Is because he's going through this with a doctor. And again, maybe that doctor is going to do this and it will just torture him. But maybe, just maybe, this is the beginning of the process of him putting the pieces of his life back together.
It's kind of the cure, which fits. I mean, that fits the doctor motif.
And I think that's the one. But I do think I think there's a really nice scissor with the purgatory idea, where if purgatory brings absolution, it's the process of attaining heaven. If purgatory, if you don't find peace and absolution in purgatory, then it's just that is the process of hell.
What's the difference? What is the difference?
Exactly. Well, and that's
if hell is the absence of, if the hell is the absence of God, then what is the difference between that and purgatory if you're stuck reliving the same horrific moments?
And it's very much C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce, where the people are stuck there and then they go off in the bus or whatever, and it's very much that idea, but obviously told in a very different way. But yeah, no, it's very fascinating. And there's a lot of other theorizing with the book. There's a lot of other details where people get into different things. There's also a lot of criticism that people have done about to like dive in on the exact timeline. There's people have theorized because the exact place names in the book have not been laid out, so we don't know exactly where this is occurring. We were told the Midwest, and that's about it. And then there's like southern states mentioned for certain pieces. There's a lot of really, really good criticism where people try to suss out exactly what's happening. And it's really fun and worth spending time thinking and reading about. And that's why it's so much fun to do stuff like this and talk about it. But but yeah, so I mean, again, in that finalization, the book ends on this weird story about the she, which again, like, I just like, it was
the ancient godlike beings in Ireland
who become geese to try to stay alive forever. Which again, that was one of the stories I was like, I don't know what to do with this. This is like the very end of the book.
I didn't either.
I have no
My head hurt.
I have no idea what to do with this. Like, it's cool, but I'm lost. I'm totally lost. But I think on the Wolf Wiki, which I have not read all of it, there's people have tried to kind of Obviously, people have tried to figure out exactly what's being said there, because I do think there's a lot of the truth of the story is revealed through these little fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
And there's ones in every chapter, but yeah, Peace. I loved it. I really thoroughly enjoyed reading it.
I did too, and it's fascinating to me that I love it. This is the second big conversation that we've had about this book, and I love it more now than I did when I was reading it or when I finished reading it. So I very much look forward to reading it again.
Yep.
And revisiting this in a few months, and see, have a shorter episode, see what we see where we're at on a reread of this one.
I agree. That'd be a blast. Any closing thoughts before we call it a night?
Sam, go for it if you got anything. Now the Jacob Marley thing was kind of my closing thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is Gene Wolfe speaking from the dead. I think he wrote this novel on purpose as sort of a vassal for him to communicate after he had died.
Yeah.
And I think he's talking to us.
Yep. He speaks to us.
He definitely
even
is.
now. All right.
Yep.
You want to show us? You want to show us that Henry Cavill meme, and we'll be done?
Yeah. So I've got one more thing to share. I think this is very, very helpful.
Okay.
Female celebrities swooning over Henry Cavill.
Can you see sound. This?
Yeah, there it is.
I can see it.
Yep.
You mostly need to see it.
Yeah, there's the one I mentioned earlier. Yeah, there it is.
Watch that. These are all his co-stars.
I'm feeling myself swoon. Look at that smile.
Amy Adams is the worst, and then Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
What a stud.
That's basically it. It's there's actually so many memes just like that.
I think that's what Cavill is what I think Alden Dennis Weir believes he's like in his head. I mean, he just doesn't get why he doesn't get why it doesn't work out for him with girls.
Yeah. I mean,
Definitely.
If you like a girl, just ask her out.
just ask her out, Alden.
Henry Cavill, 41.
All right, boys. What a phenomenal discussion.
This was very fun.
Read Peace. Read more Gene Wolfe.
Read more Gene Wolfe. You can follow us, like and subscribe, all the good things. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Undertowers Podcast. And yeah, come check us out again soon. Thanks, y'all.
Love y'all.